What's up, Falcons Nation? It's your boy Jew coming at you guys with another episode of What's the Word Dirty Bird. I do this every Wednesday night. Um, I really appreciate each and every one of you guys for continuing to tune in, continuing to share out my content. I see Joseph Thornton is already in the building. What's going on, Joseph? But definitely hit that like button. Go ahead and share out this content. I really appreciate, like I said, you guys continuing to tune in. I was supposed to have a special guest on tonight's show, but my special guest actually had to cancel. So we will still talk Atlanta Falcons talk. We will still do Atlanta Falcons Q&A in this show. But I will also be having a special guest next Wednesday as well at 7 p.m. So you guys are going to stay tuned for that. It's actually going to be a New Orleans Saints YouTuber that's going to be joining me next Wednesday night. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump into the chat because I see you guys starting to join in the chat. My boy Wiz, he recently started his channel. I had him on, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and we talked Atlanta Falcons and we talked Dallas Cowboys. He recently started his page. So what's going on, Wiz? What's up to Jamari Williams in the chat, man? What's going on? I hope you guys had a great day and having a great week so far. It is hump day. It's Wednesday. And like I said, I'm coming at you guys with another episode of What's the Word Dirty Bird. And we're going to jump right into things. We actually have a lot going on when it comes to training camp. Training camp is right around the corner. Jamari Williams says, no, a Saints fan coming. Yeah, it's not actually a Saint. Well, he is a Saints fan, but he's actually a Saints YouTuber that's going to be joining me next week. But I will keep you guys posted. But with that being said, we are going to talk a little bit tonight about my expectations for the upcoming season, our Atlanta Falcons, and we're going to talk about the upcoming training camp. So I expect to be on here for maybe about an hour tonight, talking about training camp and some of the training camp battles that's going to take place in this upcoming training camp, which I believe starts next week, if I'm not mistaken, for our Atlanta Falcons. So that is the first topic of the night, is training camp battles. What battles are you guys looking forward to heading into this season? Personally, the main position battle that I'm looking at, the number one position battle that I'm looking at, is the offensive line for our Atlanta Falcons. As we know, Alex Mack did sign with the San Francisco 49ers. So now we do have Matt Hennessy and Drew Dahlman, who we drafted this year out of Stanford, I believe it was. Those two guys are going to battle it out for that starting center position. We also have Jalen Mayfield on the offensive line, who's going to be competing with Caleb McGarry, possibly for the right tackle position, and also possibly looking at battling for that left guard position. Now that we have we have had a revolving door at that left guard position over the last couple years. We had Carpenter the last couple years. We had Jamon Brown for a couple years with our Atlanta Falcons, but we really have struggled at that left guard position. So I definitely think that left guard position is going to be a battle to see if Jalen Mayfield is going to fill that role or whether he's going to fill that right tackle position. But we got a ton of new guys on that offensive line in those two positions, at that right tackle position and at that left guard position. So that's the main battle that I'm actually looking into, or I'm looking at. And with that being said, what's going on, Miss Asia? Yeah, I just started, but we're just talking about basically training camp battles. The offensive line is what I'm looking at. I think that that's going to be key, especially with Arthur Smith coming in as the head coach, being a former offensive lineman in college, and him being a guy that's an offensive coordinator. He knows a lot about run schemes, and he's huge on physicality and running the football. So I'm really interested to see what guys are going to win those position battles up front. I think everything starts up front in the trenches on the offensive line and defensive line. And with Alex Mack moving on to the San Francisco 49ers, I think it's going to be really, really, key to see if one of these guys can step up, whether it's Matt Hennessy or whether it's Drew Dahlman. And I'm glad this year that we have preseason games and we're not going to just jump right into the thick of things, right into the season. We'll get to see these guys battle it out, not only at training camp and in practice, but we'll get to see these guys in live action to see how these guys do in the games. Because I always state when it comes to practice and the actual games, that the game speed is always different, from practice to the game. It's a whole different ball game. So it's really going to be interesting to see if this offensive line can come together and be a lot better than we've had the last couple of seasons. The last couple of seasons, we kind of have struggled on the offensive line, whether it was due to Dirk Cutter's, poor play calling, or whether it has been, the guys just struggling up front, like Jamon Brown and the James Carpenters of the world that we brought in to kind of try to solidify the offensive line. The next position that I'm looking at, other than the offensive line heading into training camp, is going to be, I'll say on the offensive side, it possibly will be the wide receivers now that Julio Jones is going, to see what guy's going to step up. I do think that it'll be Russell Gage that'll possibly be the second wide receiver on the depth chart. But as far as after that second wide receiver position, after Calvin Ridley and after Russell Gage, there's no guarantees as far as the third wide receiver, the fourth wide receiver, and so on and so forth. I mean, we have a lot of guys that can fill those roles. As far as, Zacchaeus is one of those guys that a lot of people are saying they think will be that third receiver. Frank Darby is a guy that we brought in the draft. Also, that's been mentioned a lot. Possibly could be one of those guys that can step up in camp. But we have a lot of guys at that wide receiver position that we brought in. Tarjay Sharp is a guy that was on the Tennessee Titans. He played under our new head coach, Arthur Smith, for the Tennessee Titans. So it's numerous wide receivers that can possibly step up on the offensive side of things. So it's going to be really interesting to see which guys after Calvin Ridley and after Russell Gage. It's going to be real interesting to see which guys can step up and, do some things on that offensive side of the ball now that Julio Jones have moved on and we traded him to the Tennessee Titans. Now, I seen Jamari Williams already saying O-line, O-line, D-line. Yeah, you already know I love the defensive line. You guys know that's definitely another position that I'm going to be looking at heading into training camp, is that defensive line. You guys know that I love the defensive line and the offensive line, and you guys know that I'm huge at talking about the trenches on the defensive side of the ball, especially. And I definitely will have my eyes, especially on that defensive line in training camp as well. What's going on, Mad Mike? He said, Juju, man, I'm late. Oh, you didn't miss too much. I just jumped into things. We talking mainly training camp battles of what guys we think are going to be able to step up in training camp and what position battles we're looking forward to. Like I said, I was just talking about the defensive line, and you guys know how I love the defensive line. I think on the defensive line, I already did a video of talking about guys that I'm going to be watching. Marlon Davidson is one of the main guys that I'm actually going to be looking at and watching in this upcoming training camp, due to him having COVID last season and due to him not really playing a whole lot last season. We really need him to step up and have a big year, especially since we really didn't bring in a lot of talent as far as the defensive tackle position goes. Now, when I did my video, I actually forgot about Tyquan Graham. He's a young player that we brought in, I think, out of Texas. And he's a guy that also is really interesting, that can possibly compete up front with Marlon Davidson, with Tyler Davison. He's another guy that's going to throw his hat in the ring and compete with those guys in training camp. Now, one of my hot takes in one of my shows here on What's the Word Dirty Bird was that Tyler Davison was going to be a guy that's going to possibly be cut, because I had one of the fans ask who would be one of the guys that I think may be cut after training camp, or heading into the season. And I think one of the veteran players that may be cut is a guy like Tyler Davison, because to me, he hasn't lived up to the hype. I think he's the guy that could possibly be going, but he's definitely going to have his hands full with battling with Tyquan Graham, battling. I forget the guy's first name, but I know his last name is Bullard. We brought him in as well to compete on the defensive line. We brought him over from the Chicago Bears. So we have a lot of bodies, but we gotten a lot younger on the defensive side of the ball on this Atlanta Falcons team, which I think is going to be a good thing, because there's a lot of opportunities for guys to be able to step up and play well to actually gain or earn playing time. Because this new regime, as we know, with bringing in Arthur Smith, with bringing in Terry Fontenot, they believe in making these guys compete for their position. So I definitely am interested to see, what these guys do up front and how these guys compete for those starting roles and for those rotational positions. I see Tony Wright in the building. What's going on, Tony Wright? He says Marlon Davidson has to come through on the defensive line. And I completely agree with that statement. I do think that Marlon Davidson is a guy that's going to be able to have a better season. As we know, last year, Marlon Davidson didn't have a chance to really, get solidified. He really didn't have a chance because they didn't have the rookie mini camps and things of that nature due to COVID. He never really got, enough playing time. He was battling injuries. He had COVID, and pretty much the season was almost gone by the time he actually got out on the field, and he got limited snaps. So we really don't know what Marlon Davidson is yet in the NFL. Now, I am an Auburn Tigers fan in the collegiate side of things. When it comes to college football, I've seen most of Marlon Davidson's games when he was on the collegiate level. He is a guy that's versatile, a guy that you can use on the inside of the defensive line, and he's versatile enough to play on the outside. So he's a guy that can use his strength, and I definitely can see, Marlon Davidson doing some things. But you're correct with that, Tony Wright, that we do need him to step up this year and possibly be that guy to play next to Grady Jarrett and solidify that defensive line. Mario Brown says, you think Felipe gets the job once Matt Ryan's going, or we draft the next franchise QB? That's a good question. I actually like Felipe Franks. I've seen his tape. I think he has a big arm, a strong arm. He's about 6'5", 200 plus pounds, 230 pounds, 235 pounds. He's one of those guys that has, like I said, a big arm. I think he needs to work a little bit on his reading, going through his progressions and things of that nature on an NFL level. But he has the arm strength to make every pass on the NFL level. So I definitely think that Felipe Franks is a guy who could definitely, if he's under Matt Ryan and groomed under Matt Ryan for a couple years, he could be a guy that could be the successor to Matt Ryan. Now, of course, Arthur Smith and the coaching staff are not going to hand him that position or hand him that role. He is going to have to, compete. But I definitely think that it's a chance that Felipe Franks could be the future. I mean, I like the pickup. He played at Florida and at Arkansas. So he played in the SEC, which to me is the toughest college football conference. They put out a lot of great defensive players and offensive players. So he's played against the toughest competition as far as on the collegiate level, and he did pretty well. So I definitely think that Felipe Franks is a guy we also can watch going into this training camp, and especially looking forward to watching him in the preseason games to see how well he is under live fire. Once he's placed in the fire, to see how well he's able to call plays and things of that nature in the huddle, the way that he goes about himself as far as leading this offense. And I'm looking forward to seeing his composure, because when I watch a quarterback, you want to have a quarterback that, has composure in the pocket, a guy that's not afraid to take a hit in the pocket, a guy that's willing to stand in there and look down the field and not really pay attention to the rush, but is willing to stand in there and make big throws. And I think that Felipe Franks could be, like I said, the future of the Atlanta Falcons. But right now, we all know that it's Matt Ryan's time right now. But if he's groomed under Matt Ryan a couple years, I think he can learn a lot from a veteran like Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's one of the best quarterbacks to ever play this game. And Matt Ryan definitely can drop some gems for a guy like Felipe Franks. Let's see here. and Mad Mike Sports. Y'all go check him out. Definitely hit that like and subscribe button on this channel. He says, I really like Taekwon Graham. AO, I can't say his name. Yeah, Ogundeji. Yeah, Ogundeji. I really like Okutukumbo Ogundeji. I think is how you pronounce his name. If K Styles was here, he can pronounce it perfect. But we call him AO around here on Jew Talk Sports. And me and Mad Mike call him AO. Yeah, I like AO a lot. He's a guy that has very long arms, about 6'4", 6'5", and you see it right here. Tony Wright is talking about Ogundeji's second, fifth round pick, 6'4", 268 pounds out of Notre Dame. Yeah, he's one of those guys. He was one of the leaders on that defense, and he's definitely one of those guys who I think could be one of those players that can also be groomed under Dante Fowler, under Grady Jarrett. I don't know how much he's going to bring to the table this season. I know that Dean Pease is a great coach, is a great defensive coordinator, and he's going to have these young guys ready to. Don't call these guys bust after the first year. Give these guys some time to develop. Even Taekwon Graham, who Mike also mentioned. I like both of those guys. I do think that both of those guys are have size and have skill. Ogundeji is one of those guys that's good with using his hands, has really long arms, and I love defensive players that have length, where they can keep offensive tackles and things of that nature off of them and keep their jersey clean, where they're not able to hold those guys and things of that nature when they're coming off the edge. So I definitely think that Ogundeji has the physical attributes. We're just going to have to see how he develops, but he could be a guy also on that defensive line and in training camp that we need to watch and see how he develops. Hopefully he can come right in and hit the ground running and give us something in his first year. If he can give us like 3 to 5 sacks this year, to me, that would be a successful season for a player like Ogundeji. But I'm not too sure how much, he's going to bring to the table, in this first season. I see Ian Miles. He says, do you think the Falcons will have a top 10 defense? I don't believe the Falcons will have a top 10 defense this season. I do believe the Falcons are going to be somewhere in between 15 and 19 as far as the defensive ranks. That's where I think the Falcons will be, which will be an immense there will be a immense improvement, from last season, because last season we were like 30th, I think, overall in defense or something crazy like that. We were in the bottom 4 of the league when it came to defense. So I definitely think any improvement will be great for Atlanta Falcons defense, but I don't think they'll be top 10 quite yet. And when you talk about top 10 defenses, yardage factors into how many yards you give up a game, how many points you give up a game. I don't really see the Falcons being top 10 defense this season. I think that the Falcons will be somewhere between 15 and 19, which is, like I said, will be a great improvement. I do think with Dean Pease at the helm, he's going to, like I said, have these guys ready to play. He's going to be blitzing from everywhere. He's going to be giving these quarterbacks a lot of different looks. And I expect this defense to be much improved. What I'm mainly looking at heading into this season is improvement. I know that I have stated that the Falcons will be a playoff team, and I have made the proclamation that I think this Falcons team will shock a lot of people this year. But any improvement we see from last year being 4-12 or whatever our record was, something like that, any improvement over 4-12 will be great. I don't believe that Arthur Smith or Terry Fontenot really has any pressure heading into this first season. As we know, they came into a bad cap situation, and they basically came into a situation where they really couldn't bring in their players that they like as far as spending money wise. They weren't able to go after the top names in free agency. They basically just brought in guys that would fit the scheme on the cheap. So a lot of these guys that we brought in, especially on the defensive side of the ball, are on one-year deals. So a lot of these guys that we're seeing now may not even be Falcons going forward, other than the guys that we drafted. As far as the one-year deal guys that we brought in on the defense, the safeties that we brought in, like Deron Harmon, Eric Harris, a lot of these guys are going to be bridge guys to help bring along these young guys. So I definitely think, we're headed in the right direction. Like I said, any improvement this year over last year, if we can get somewhere in the teens, like I said, anywhere between 19 and 15 will be a huge jump from last year being in the bottom half of the league in the lower 20s the last couple seasons for defense. Mad Mike says, I've noticed Dean Pease likes defensive linemen who have long arms and size. And that's something that I like. He says 6'4", 270, 280. That's something that Dan Quinn didn't really care for. As far as bringing in guys on the defensive line, Dan Quinn liked those guys that were kind of light and fast and quick. And, you know, he wanted those smaller defensive linemen and smaller offensive linemen. Personally, I like the way that Dean Pease is going about this. And I like the way that the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens and a lot of those teams, the Chicago Bears, those teams usually have bigger defensive linemen. Even the New England Patriots, they're known for having big offensive lines and big defensive lines. I'm a fan of having big players up front on your defensive line. All of your players don't have to be huge. Like, you can have some outside linebackers, just like the Steelers with TJ Watt. He's not the biggest guy. He's around the same size as Dante Fowler. He's not, a huge guy. But on the inside, they have, big guys like Stephon Tuitt, who's 6'4", 320 pounds. If you remember the New England Patriots, when they had Vince Wilfork, you need those big guys up front that can eat up blocks. And I feel like that's what the Falcons have been missing ever since we lost Rashid Hageman, who was like 6'6", 320 pounds. We haven't had those big guys up front since the Rashid Hageman, since the Dontari Poe days. So I think that's something that the Falcons need to look to go back to. And I think that that's something with Dean Pease being an old school head coach, a guy that believes in physicality, him and Arthur Smith, I really think we're going to see a lot more size being added to this Falcons team in the years to come. And I really think that they did a pretty good job of bringing in, depth on the defensive line and bringing in depth on the offensive line in the draft. But I would like to see over the next couple of years, once we have a little bit more money, now the cap situation kind of has been rectified, I would like to see us bring in guys with a little bit more size, like the Pittsburgh Steelers, where you have those nose tackles that's really big up front. Because Grady Jarrett is really not a nose. He's really a 3-tech. He's only like 305 pounds on a good day. He's about 6'1" or 6 feet. So he's not the tallest or the biggest type of guy. He's more of a pass rusher from the inside. I really feel like the Falcons do need to go out and get one of those guys like a Derek Brown, who's like 6'5", 320 plus pounds or 330 plus pounds. And I think that that's something that the Falcons need to look at doing in the next couple seasons, is adding some guys with more size. Shout out to my boy J-Rock in the chat. You guys go check him out on Twitch. He does the games over there on Twitch, and he also runs the Atlanta Falcons Nation, our page there on Twitch as well. So you guys definitely go check out J-Rock. That's Atlanta Falcons Nation family right there. So I appreciate you tuning in. And if you're just joining the chat, please go ahead and share out this content. Hit that like button for your boy. I really appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys tuning in every Wednesday night and tuning in tonight with your boy. And let's see here. Jamari Williams says, Jew, I'm glad people are doubting us because we are going to shock a lot. I'm guessing saying a lot of people, just like the Super Bowl season, people doubted us. And like you said, we have no pressure going into this season. And I completely agree, Jamari Williams. I agree with this statement. Right now, we're playing with house money as the Falcons organization. We don't have really any pressure right now heading into this season. I mean, the only player that has possibly pressure on them is Matt Ryan, and that's because his window is kind of closing. He's one of the older quarterbacks in the game. Now, I do think that Matt Ryan may play for he may have a good 3 or 4 years left in the tank, but he's kind of in a win now situation, especially now that Julio Jones has moved on to the Titans. I do think that Matt Ryan does want to win in the next couple seasons, but I do believe that Matt Ryan is a guy that can play into his 40s if he wants to. I mean, we are seeing, the quarterback position with Tom Brady, Drew Brees. These guys are now playing well into their mid 40s. So I do think that Matt Ryan has a lot left in the tank, but I do believe he's under a little bit of pressure because his clock is ticking. At this point, when you're on the back half of your career, he's been in the league 13 years at this point. You know, he wants to get back to that Super Bowl as soon as possible while he still has zip on the ball, while he still has arm strength. He wants to be able to lead this Falcons team back to a Super Bowl, you know, while we still have a lot of these guys as well under these rookie contracts. I talked about it numerous times here on my channel. The best way to win is when you have a lot of your guys on the rookie deals, when you don't have to worry about cutting guys because of salary cap issues. Right now, we have a guy like Kyle Pitts who just signed, I believe, a 4 or 5 year deal on his rookie contract. So we definitely want to win a Super Bowl, if possible, as soon as possible, while Kyle Pitts and players like that are still under their rookie contracts. Guys like Calvin Ridley, who's on his 5th year option this season. We're going to have to pay a lot of these guys coming up really soon that's still under these rookie contracts. A guy like Foye Oluokun is another guy who I talked about, the outstanding linebacker for our team. He's another guy that is currently under his rookie contract still, but will be needing a new contract really soon. So we need to start winning, you know, games and hopefully get back and compete for a Super Bowl before it's time to make those big financial decisions where you might have to, you know, make those tough decisions and allow some of these players to walk in free agency because we're possibly going to be outbidded, you know, by other teams that's going to overpay for these guys. But let's see here. I do want to get into you guys' comments as well. I see someone already in the chat saying 12-5 this year. I definitely think that the Falcons, you know, I said we're going no worse than 11-6, I believe, but I think 12-5 is the number that I had in my last show that I did with Wiz on my channel, which was 2 weeks ago. We talked about the expectations for this Falcons team this season and record predictions, and I said 12-5, so that sounds about right. I think we go 12-5, 11-6 at worst. Just looking at the schedule, our schedule is not really a tough schedule, even though we've seen years where we didn't have a tough schedule and we lost games we shouldn't have lost, you know, over the last couple seasons. And I want to shout out Isaac. What's going on, man? He said we need beef. Yeah, we do. We need as much beef as we can up front. We need those big guys. Like those big guys up front are the unsung heroes, you know, of the defense and of the offense. They don't get the shine that they deserve. But I definitely think that the offensive line is a reason why quarterbacks, you know, buy their offensive line Christmas gifts and things of that nature. Around Christmas time, they buy, you know, their offensive linemen flat screen TVs and Rolexes and cars and all those things. And that's because they help the quarterback get the job done. You know, without having a great offensive line, quarterbacks, you know, they can't do anything. It doesn't matter how good your wide receivers are. It doesn't matter how good your running backs are. We've seen over the last couple seasons, we arguably had the best wide receiving core in the league when we had Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, Hayden Hurst last season. And we went 4-12, even with a great offensive, all of that offensive talent. And that just goes to show you that, you know, playing up front with those big guys is key. You know, having those guys up front that can do the dirty work on the defensive line and the offensive line is key. And we have a super chat in the building from Teacher Red. So we got to ring the victory bell. That's what we do here at Jew Talk Sports. As I always say, any donations or super chats that we receive, or whether it's at my Cash App or here on our live streams with the super chats, goes to you know, helping the channel grow, goes to improving the channel. So I really appreciate the super chat of $20. She says, do you think that Kaleb McGary will be more consistent this year? And this is a great question. I definitely think that Kaleb McGary is a guy that will improve this year. The reason I think that Kaleb McGary will improve is due to the play calling. I think with Arthur Smith being here and playing a physical style of game as far as running the ball more, not having these guys backpedaling, you know, 40 and 50 times a game, dropping Matt Ryan back. They always say that the best, you know, a best friend to a quarterback and to an offensive lineman is a steady running game. Allow these big men. Kaleb McGary is like 6'6", 6'7", 300 and some pounds. Let these big guys go forward and maul these defensive linemen. These guys hate when they're backpedaling and when they're on their heels. those big guys like that, that's 300 plus pounds, going backwards isn't a natural, a natural thing for these guys to be backpedaling. That's not a natural motion, but going forward is. So allow these guys to be, like road grazers, like run these guys over is basically what I'm stating. Like allow these guys up front to be aggressive, allow these guys to go, go forward and be bodyguards. Throw these guys out the club, as they say. Let these big guys up front do what they do best, and that's go forward. If you look at teams, in the 90s, the Dallas Cowboys, they had guys up front that would just run you over. They had guys with Emmitt Smith running the ball. They had big guys up front that was going to move you against your will. And that's pretty much, I think sometimes we make football, more difficult than it really is. Football is just moving another man against his will. So if you have, those big guys up front that can move, the offensive line can move that defensive line and push them and knock them off the ball. That's what you want to do. So I definitely think that Kaleb McGary this year is going to be more consistent. I do believe he's going to be able to knock these guys off the football. And I do expect Kaleb McGary to have a big year this year. I do think bringing in a guy like Mayfield is also going to light a fire under Kaleb McGary's feet to kind of play better as well. Because anytime you bring in competition, all of these guys, all these players have pride, and these guys are definitely, want to come up, stand up to the challenge. When you bring in a younger player to try to replace these, these guys, these veteran guys that are already on the roster, these guys are going to definitely take that personal. And I really expect a guy like Kaleb McGary to have a big year this year. And I expect, due to the play calling, that he's definitely going to be able to come and have a bounce back season due to him not being, being in bad situations where he's basically backpedaling and dropping back, Matt Ryan dropping back 40, 50 times every game. And these guys basically being passive up front. We got another super chat in the building. Mad Mike Sports with a $5 holler. And we do bring the victory bell around here. And Mad Mike says, do you think Arthur Smith will make people believe in him? And that's a great question as well by Mad Mike. Like I said, you guys, if you haven't checked out Mad Mike Sports, Atlanta Falcons Nation, definitely go over and hit that like and subscribe button on Mad Mike's content. He does great Atlanta Falcons content there. I forget at this point if he's on the road. So I think he's on the road to 7,000, if I'm not mistaken. But this is a great question. Do you think Arthur Smith is going to make people believe in him? I definitely think he will. And Mad Mike knows when we've done our shows on Atlanta Falcons Nation, just to put a quick plug in, Monday nights, Kicking It with K Styles, on Tuesday nights when the season comes back in about a month or so, we will be doing our Tuesday night shows, Atlanta Falcons Heavy Hitters, which is me, Mad Mike, and K Styles. He knows last season that I was one of the main guys on our show that wanted the Falcons to go out and bring in an offensive-minded head coach. And that was because I wanted a great offensive mind to be paired with Matt Ryan. I saw years ago, a couple years back when Kyle Shanahan was here, Matt Ryan was able to be basically linked up with one of the best offensive minds in the game in Kyle Shanahan, and Matt Ryan went to an elite level and was able to ascend and win an MVP. So I definitely think Matt Ryan is already a great quarterback, but when you put him with a great offensive mind that's going to be able to call great plays and put Matt Ryan in great positions to be successful, I think that it's only going to take Matt Ryan's game to the next level. And I expect this year, and I've said it here on my channel, Jew Talk Sports, that I think Matt Ryan is going to have one of those seasons this year that's going to be on an MVP level. I really think he's going to be in the MVP conversation. Matt Ryan has religiously thrown for over 4,000 yards every single season, or eclipsed 4,000 passing yards. And I really think this year is going to be the same exact thing. I do think that Matt Ryan definitely will have a chance to eclipse 4,000 yards again passing, because Matt Ryan is just that great. But I definitely think that Arthur Smith is going to be a guy that's going to make a lot of guys, a lot of guys around the league and a lot of fans around the league believers. If you look at Kyle Shanahan, when he left Atlanta and went to the San Francisco 49ers as the head coach, he was able to get that team to the Super Bowl, even though they didn't win it. He was able to lead that team to a Super Bowl. If you look at with the Green Bay Packers, Matt LaFleur, he's a great offensive mind as well. Both of those guys are cut off that same West Coast type of offense cloth, and they believe in running the ball and play action in that West Coast offense. And Arthur Smith is cut off the same similar cloth as those two guys. And if you look at the success that Matt LaFleur has had, and if you look at the success that Kyle Shanahan has had as young head coaches in the league, I really feel like the NFL is going towards the offensive side of the ball, because a lot of the rules now in the NFL are catered towards the offensive side of the ball, because the NFL wants teams to be able to put up points and they want the games to be more entertaining. The way that the league is kind of lopsided right now, everything and all of the rule changes are slighted towards the offense. So I definitely think that Arthur Smith is going to make everybody believe in him and believe in the Atlanta Falcons. If you look at what he was able to do with Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee, he was able to basically resurrect his career and got Ryan Tannehill the bag. Basically, he got a whole new contract from going from being cut or traded by the Miami Dolphins, and he was the backup to Marcus Mariota, to being a guy that was a Pro Bowler for the Tennessee Titans and comeback player of the year for the Tennessee Titans. So I definitely think Arthur Smith is going to make everybody believe. I love his approach to the game as far as no nonsense. He believes in, making these guys earn everything that they get. He's a no nonsense head coach when it comes to, if you mess up in practice, you're going to run laps. If you jump off sides, if you drop passes in practice, if you're not, lined up properly, if you're making mistakes in practice, we're going to make you run. And I love his attention to detail, in this game. I really love the way that Arthur Smith approaches the game. So I definitely think this year, Arthur Smith is going to make everybody believe in the Atlanta Falcons and believe in him. And I think it's very important that the Falcons start off fast. We've said that numerous times here at AFN. I've heard Mike say that this is a young football team, and we know how some of these Atlanta Falcons fans can be. The fair weather Atlanta Falcons fans, we know how they can be. A lot of them wanted us to draft a guy like Justin Fields and things of that nature. So I definitely think, we need to get off to a fast start so that the Boo Birds don't come out early, so that the Atlanta Falcons fans will actually come out to the games and actually give us a home field advantage on our home turf, because we know that our Atlanta Falcons fans haven't been known for coming out and supporting the team and giving us that home field advantage that we need. So hopefully this team gets out to a fast start and makes the fans believers, because we know the Falcons fans love winners. They want us, want the team to win. And if the team is not winning, usually that's when the stadium is empty and we don't have that home field advantage. And I do want to jump back into the chat and get some of you guys' questions. And we're going to jump, I guess, straight into you guys' questions and do like some Q&A, because I don't want to be on too long tonight. But being that my special guest didn't join us tonight, we're going to go ahead and just jump into the Q&A session part of the show. So if you guys have questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. I'm going to try to answer as many questions as I can. But let's see here. Hayden Hughes says, hey, I think we should bring in Geno Atkins, DT from the Bengals. He just got cleared from the doctors. Your thoughts on him? And great comment by Hayden. When it comes to Geno Atkins, I think him and Grady Jarrett are pretty much the same player. Like if you look at their attributes, their size, both of them are about 6'1", 6 feet. Both of them are really small defensive tackles. Don't have long arms, but they're very quick. They have great short area quickness. And both of those guys are like basically pass rushers just from the inside of the defensive line. So, I'm not a big fan of bringing in a guy like Geno Atkins. I am a big fan of Geno Atkins' game. I do think he's a great player, but I don't think that he will be a good fit for the Atlanta Falcons because he's the same player that we already have. I really think that the Falcons need to go out and bring in a guy that's 6'3" to 6'5", anywhere in that range, that has long arms, that's big, that can be a plugger on the inside, that will free up Grady Jarrett. I don't know if having a guy like Geno Atkins on the inside necessarily I do think he would create havoc. Him and Grady Jarrett could create havoc, but they would be two smaller defensive tackles playing together. So it would be interesting to see if that could work. But I really think that the Grady Jarrett needs a guy that can eat up double teams. And I don't know that Geno Atkins is a guy necessarily that can eat up double teams. And I'm not too sure how much money Geno Atkins is looking for. But Geno Atkins is a great player, a guy that's very comparable, or somebody that plays exactly the same way that Grady Jarrett approaches the game. If you go check out Geno Atkins tape, he looks like Grady Jarrett. I mean, down to the number. They both wear number 97. So those guys are like the same exact player. So I wouldn't mind having a nasty defensive tackle like Geno Atkins. I just want the Falcons to bring in a bigger guy that can eat up some blocks and that can play with that brute strength. Because I think we're missing that mountain of a man in the inside. I think we need one of those guys that's 6'6", 6'5", 330 pounds that you can't move out of the running lanes and things of that nature. Somebody that's going to take up space and have that brute strength. I think that's really what the Falcons are missing. But that was a great question, Hayden. Let's see here. And this question here says, do you see Matt Ryan adjust to this new scheme quickly this season? I do think that Matt Ryan will adjust well this season to Arthur Smith's scheme. I think he'll pick it up pretty fast. And the reason I believe that is Arthur Smith's scheme, from what I've seen and what I've heard from it, just from former Tennessee Titan coaches and things of that nature, and former players, it seems like his scheme is really, really simple, but it's complex at the same time. And what I mean by that is it's just like Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur that I mentioned, that they run the same formations over and over again, but they mix them up, meaning they can run the same formation, but run like 10 different plays out of the same formation. So that's what catches teams off guard and throws teams off, is that we come out and line up the same exact way, but it's so many variables from that same alignment. And that's really what's going to throw teams off. So I really think that the running game is really going to be potent. And I think based off of that running game being so potent, and we're going to be so physical, that teams are going to have to drop that extra man down in the box to try to help stop the run. And once you do that, we basically have you eating out of our hand. And Arthur Smith is going to open up that passing game on you with the Kyle Pitts and the Hayden Hurst across the middle of the field, the guys running wheel routes out of the backfield like Javion Hawkins, like Cordero Patterson. So it's going to be, it's going to look really simple. Like his schemes are going to look really simple, but the complexity is going to come in when you're running all of these different schemes out of the same formation. And I think that's really what's going to throw teams off, that the predictability. You're not going to be able to predict what the Falcons are doing just by how they're lined up, because there's going to be so many different formations, different versions of that same pretty much alignment, that teams are going to be thrown off by that. So I definitely think that Matt Ryan, being that he's a veteran, he's had so many different offensive head coaches, I really think that him and Arthur Smith are going to really quick, really fast, because everything is going to be predicated off the run. And like I said, it's not a whole lot of formations that you necessarily have to learn. It's basically learning what you can do out of the formation is what's going to be key. Let's see here. And Jamari Williams says, Jude, do you think we need another cornerback next to AJ Terrell? I think we're good at the corner position. I've been seeing a lot of people. I did a video on my channel, Jude Talk Sports, talking about Richard Sherman. A lot of people were saying that they wanted us to bring in Richard Sherman because he has that experience. He's a former Pro Bowler, multiple-time Pro Bowl corner. And I basically stated in that video that I think we're good at the corner position. Like, I don't really think that we need to bring in any additional cornerbacks necessarily. I think we need to see what these young guys can do. So I like what we did in the draft, bringing in the two corners that we brought in the draft, bringing Richie Grant in to be that guy who can be a playmaker in the safety position. And I like what we did in bringing in Fabian Monroe, who's a guy we brought in from the Washington football team. I think he's a guy that's being overlooked. He's not a guy that's very vocal. And I think a lot of people kind of looked over that signing because it wasn't a splash signing. But if you go look at Fabian Monroe's tape when he was with the Washington football team, he's a guy who's really, really solid, been in the league for about 3 to 4 years, a solid veteran guy, good technique. If you go watch his tape, very solid cornerback. And I think he's going to be the number 2 corner. I do believe he's going to win that outside corner position, opposite side of AJ Terrell. And then the guys that we have on this team, like Isaiah Oliver, he showed immense improvement last season in that nickel position for us last season. And then guys like Kendall Sheffield, he's a guy that's only in his 3rd season, I believe, coming in this season. So we need to give these guys that we have on the roster a chance to develop. That's why I was saying, like Isaiah Oliver, Kendall Sheffield, these guys are not busts. We can't say that they're busts yet or just yet. We need to give these guys a chance to develop and show us what they can do. Because I really think that these guys definitely have a chance to still be solid players in the league. I think Isaiah Oliver was budding last year. He can easily be a player that can be a guy who can be here with the Atlanta Falcons for years to come. Guys like Fabian Monroe, we don't know what he can bring to the table for this Falcons team because we haven't seen him suit up yet. But I do think, just looking at his tape and from what I've seen, the Washington football team were one of the best defensive units in the league last year. And he was one of the reasons why. He was one of the solid, I believe he was the number 2 corner there in Washington. And I think he's going to be a guy that can come in for this Falcons team and kind of be that number 2 guy that we can count on, because the last couple years we really haven't had a stable number 2 cornerback. AJ Terrell was a great corner for us last year as the number 1 corner, but Isaiah Oliver proved that he really wasn't the best at playing on the outside. He proved that playing on the inside was where he was best. So I definitely think we should give these young guys a chance before we just start bringing in veteran guys. That's basically going to stunt the growth of these young guys that we're trying to see what we have. Let's see here. Hayden says, based off of the needs we have right now, what top 3 position needs to be addressed in next year's draft? Also, you're way ahead of the game, Hayden. You're looking at next season. I think we need to wait and see when it comes to this. And that's something that me, Mad Mike, K Styles, but that's really something that Mad Mike loves to say, is just let's wait and see. And that's something that I agree with. I think in this instance, we just need to wait and see. It's too early right now to tell what we're going to need. Let's see how this season plays out. Now, if you're just asking me to give, projected future, I would say defensive line and offensive line. You always want to bring in pass rushers. You never can have enough solid players on the defensive line. You can look at a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who go like 4 and 5 deep as far as pass rushers. I mean, they got Ndamukong Suh, Shaq Barrett, JPP. They just brought in Joe Tryon that they drafted, who's a defensive end / outside linebacker. So I believe in strength in numbers when it comes to rushing the passer and having a gang of guys that can get after the passer. If you look at the New York Giants, they were known for having, when they won those 2 Super Bowls, they were known for having numerous pass rushers. Osi Umenyiora, Justin Tuck, Michael Strahan, Matthias Kiwanuka. I mean, they had a litany of guys that could get after the passer. And they had Jason Pierre-Paul when they drafted Jason Pierre-Paul. So there was a team that were known for having 5 and 6 guys that can come in and rotate in and out of the game to keep those guys fresh to get after the passer. So if you're just asking me just to project the future, I would say you can never go wrong with going in and drafting offensive linemen and defensive linemen, because everything starts up front and the battles are won up front in the trenches. So I definitely think the Falcons need to continue to add defensive linemen along the defensive line. Let's see here. And Mad Mike Sports says, what do we expect the Falcons defense to do? You think we should do or needs to focus on? I think as far as this Falcons defense, I've said it. I think it's this aggressiveness. Pretty much. I really think that that's what the Falcons need to focus on. I really think the secondary was getting kind of blown out of proportion the last couple of years. and people saying that we had the worst secondary, one of the worst secondaries in the league. Personally, I don't think that the secondary was the main issue. I really think the issue is up front. If you can't get to the passer, you give quarterbacks all day to throw. Doesn't matter who you have at the cornerback position. In this league, the quarterbacks are too accurate. They're too good. The rules, the way that they are, the way that the game is played now, where you can't touch anybody after 5 yards off the ball, and the athletes on the outside, as far as the wide receivers and tight ends, the guys, these skill players are too good. You have to be able to get to the passer. If you can't get to the passer, it's going to be a long day and a long Sunday, a long Wednesday, long Monday night if you can't get to, the passer. So I definitely think what we need to focus on is being more aggressive. And that's why I think we brought in a guy like Dean Pease, who's going to be one of those guys that's going to scheme up pressure. Even if we're not getting home with just our front four, which is something that Dan Quinn kind of relied on with that cover 3, is like getting home with 4. I think that if we're not getting home with 4, you're going to see Dean Pease bring 5, 6, however many it takes for us to heat up that quarterback and make that quarterback uncomfortable. I really think the last couple seasons, we've done a poor job of getting quarterbacks off the spot. As Dan Quinn would always say, we did a poor job of making quarterbacks uncomfortable. And I think that that's something that we need to focus on, this season and going forward. And I know that that's something that Dean Pease, he's going to heat these quarterbacks up. So I expect a lot of these quarterbacks, like I've talked about, the Zach Wilsons, who we play in London this year, the Jets. I really think that these young quarterbacks and even the older quarterbacks are going to have their hands full because Dean Pease is going to be complex up front. He's going to give you a lot of different looks. He's not going to show his hand. He's going to scheme up a lot of blitzes, and he's going to disguise a lot of different things. So I definitely think that what we need to focus on is pressure and aggressiveness. We need to get after the passer, get after these guys, not be the team that's always making the adjustment, but making the opposing team, the offense, adjust to what we're doing. Meaning, if we're bringing that pressure, we want these teams to have to adjust to what we're doing. And meaning they have to get the ball out quick. Within 2-3 seconds, they got to get that ball out quick because they know that we're coming for them. So I really think that that's been the biggest issue with the Falcons. Not so much the secondary. I just feel like the pass rush hasn't been getting home. And I feel like they go hand in hand. If you have a great secondary that can, hold up on the back end, that helps the pass rushers get there when you're just trying to bring 4. But if you have a beast defensive line that can get home with 4 and that, you can come with blitzes and things of that nature, the Pittsburgh Steelers have been known for being called Blitzburg for a reason. They're a team that don't wait around. The Ravens, they were another team that Dean Pease coached. They didn't wait around. They came after your quarterback. They came and got the passer. If they weren't getting home with 4, they dialed up pressure, meaning they manufactured that pressure. And I feel like that's something that we haven't done well here in Atlanta the last couple of years. I don't think Dan Quinn did a good job of manufacturing pressure when we weren't getting home with our front 4. Hayden says, as of right now, many of our safeties are on 1-year deals. Would you like to see the Falcons draft another safety next year? Most safeties who offer something different than Richie Grant. I think we are. I think we're okay right now at safety. I think that's another position where we need to wait and see. We got Jalen Hawkins, who's a guy that we drafted last year that's not being talked about. He's kind of waiting in the wings. He's another guy because we brought in Eric Harris and we brought in Daron Harmon as those veteran guys. We haven't really focused really on guys that we haven't seen a lot of. And I think that Jalen Hawkins could be the guy that we can pair with Richie Grant. He could be the strong safety. If you go look at Jalen Hawkins' film, he was one of those guys that is a hard hitter out of Cal. He reminds me a little bit of Keanu Neal. If you look at his body style and how big of a player that he is, he's a guy that we could see, step into the spotlight and actually do some things for this Atlanta Falcons team. So even though we have Eric Harris, we have Daron Harmon, those guys are here to be like those bridge guys and to help be leaders in the secondary. I really think that we have a lot of talent in the secondary. It's just young talent. So we need to see what we have. We really don't know what we have because Isaiah Oliver is another guy who Mike really loves. Mad Mike loves Isaiah Oliver, and I love his physicality. If you watch Isaiah Oliver plays, he approaches the game like a safety, like a extra linebacker on the field. He's a guy that plays a lot like Brian Poole when he was here. And I call him like the fourth linebacker when you bring him down in the box, because he's a guy that's a sure tackler, is a guy who's great in small spaces. He's not great when you have him in the middle of the field, like in the single high safety looks, where he has to be a guy that has to get to one hash to the other. But he's very good when it comes to reading and reacting, coming downhill in those zone situations. When somebody catches the ball in the flat, if you go look at the tape of Isaiah Oliver, he was one of those guys that was one of the first guys in one-on-one situations that was able to make tackles and things of that nature in one-on-one situations. So I definitely think we have enough safeties on this team. I wouldn't mind bringing in another safety next year, but I think it's too early to say we need another safety. I think we need to see what Richie Grant, what Isaiah Oliver, what the Jalen Hawkins of the world, what these guys can do, because we may have the next starter on this roster already. So I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit when it comes to bringing in another guy to play the safety role. Let's see. Tony Wright says, I really like our starting linebackers. Outside linebacker Dante Fowler Jr., Deion Jones, Foye Oluokun, outside linebacker Michael Walker. This will be a very good unit in 2021. In our 3-4, Tampa has a good 3-4 linebacker unit as well. And I completely agree with Tony right here. And I appreciate you tuning in as always, Tony. He always has great comments on whether it's here on our live shows or whether it's just him commenting on my regular videos on my channel at Jew Talk Sports. But with that being said, you guys definitely go over to my channel. I'm on the road to 2,000 subscribers. So please hit that subscribe button on my channel. But I definitely agree with this statement by Tony Wright. I think the Falcons definitely are top 3 linebacking unit in the game. If you look at the video that I recently made about Deion Jones being a top 3 linebacker, and I recently made a video yesterday talking about the 3 linebackers to watch heading into training camp. Foye Oluokun, Deion Jones, to me, they are the best tandem of inside linebackers in today's NFL. To me, they remind me of the Bobby Wagners and KJ Wright tandems, the Brian Urlacher and Lance Briggs for years there in Chicago, the Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis with the Carolina Panthers in those years when they had those 2 linebackers that were really good. I definitely think that Foye Oluokun and Deion Jones, we need to keep those guys together. I do think that those guys are going to be great for years to come. I think that they're the best tandem in the league. A lot of people have been talking about the Devin Whites of the world that plays with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Levante David. I think that they're a top 5 tandem as well. But I think what we have to look at is Deion Jones was in the league before a Devin White. Devin White was looking up to a Deion Jones. Deion Jones was Devin White before Devin White was in the league. So being that the Falcons, have been losing the last couple seasons, especially on the defensive side of the ball, I really think that Deion Jones has kind of went overlooked. And then Foye Oluokun is another guy that I talked about in my last video that we need to watch out for him as well, because last season he came into his own. They made him a full-time starter when we got rid of Devondre Campbell. And since he's taken that starting role, he's seized the moment. Last year, he stepped into the spotlight and really became one of the stars on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, he made plays in every game pretty much last season. He was a force to be reckoned with, whether he was dropping back into coverage, making interceptions against the Chiefs where he picked off Pat Mahomes, whether it was him forcing 3 or 4 fumbles on Zeke Elliott in that Cowboys game. I mean, he was making plays all over the field all season long. So I definitely think the pairing of Deion Jones and Foye Oluokun, those 2 guys are definitely solid players. Dante Fowler Jr. is another guy I expect to have a bounce back season. And Michael Walker is another guy that can be a star. Pro Football Focus, which I don't put a ton of weight on Pro Football Focus numbers because they're mainly basing everything off of analytics. But Michael Walker is another guy that we have to watch out for. He's a guy that can get after the passer. He's another guy that can cover pretty well. And I think the Falcons definitely have the best coverage linebackers in the game, but definitely versatile guys on that defense. And I think the Dean Pease is going to have a field day with these linebackers and what, in the ways that he can actually use them because of the athleticism that these guys have. We definitely have the most athletic and like I said, to me, a top 3 linebacking core in the game. Let's see here. And Jamari Williams says, Jew, do you think Russell Gage is going to make a jump like Foye Oluokun under Arthur Smith? I definitely think that Russell Gage has already kind of come into his own. If you've seen Russell Gage over the last couple seasons, last season, I think he had like 800 or close to 800 yards receiving. He's one of those guys that is definitely a solid number 2 wide receiver. He runs great routes. If you watch him run his routes, his releases are crazy. The way he comes off the line, it's hard for defensive backs to stay in front of him. He does a great job of creating space. And I believe that's the reason that Matt Ryan loves throwing him the football, is because it seems like he knows how to get open. Him and Matt Ryan have great chemistry, and they proved that last year. Russell Gage has become the new Mohamed Sanu for this Atlanta Falcons team. He was a guy on third downs last season. If you go look at the numbers on third down, Matt Ryan really looked Russell Gage's way a lot, because Russell Gage was one of those guys you can move around, you can put in the slot, and he's a matchup nightmare because of his skill route running. He's just a very smart player, a tough player, because he's a guy as well. Unlike Calvin Ridley, who we judge a lot for being, scared to get hit and things of that nature, Russell Gage is a guy that puts his body on the line. He plays fearless. He's a guy that's known for hurdling, as Jumpman T or Twisted Torch talked about in their Saturday morning show. Red Clay Sports, you guys check them out on Saturday mornings. Just a quick plug. But he talked about Russell Gage, his ability to be spontaneous, his ability as far as him hurdling players and stuff like that. Russell Gage is not afraid to go across the middle. He's fearless, and that's one thing that I love about his game. But he's definitely a guy that I think is going to take a leap this year, especially now that Julio Jones, has moved on. I definitely think that Russell Gage will get more targets. Now, I'm not too sure if he's going to get to 1,000 yards or clip 1,000 yards, because Kyle Pitts is here, and Kyle Pitts and Hayden Hurst are guys you can also flex out wide or put in the slot. So I definitely think, though, that Russell Gage has already taken a jump, and he possibly will take a step forward this year just because of opportunities. I think he'll have more opportunities. Let's see here. And Wallace Smith says, Jew, what do you think about Tajae Sharpe? Because I think y'all are sleeping on him coming in and fitting in well with Arthur Smith's scheme, which he played under in Tennessee. And this is a great statement by Wallace Smith. I completely agree with you, Wallace. I definitely think that Tajae Sharpe is a guy that's kind of being slept on. To be honest, I just forget about him a lot of the times, because we got so many doggone players on this team as far as young guys. I mean, on the defensive line and on the offensive side of the ball, this unit is so young. We have so many players that are capable. Tajae Sharpe is another guy that is going to compete in camp. Like when I was talking about guys competing, in camp battles and things of that nature, Tajae Sharpe is going to get his opportunity to compete, not only in training camp, but during the preseason games. He's going to, be able to show the Atlanta Falcons fans and these coaches what he can bring to the table. From what I've seen of his tape when he was with Tennessee, one thing that I liked about him is he's a guy who's long. I think he's like 6'2" or 6'3". He has good speed, and he's a guy that can get yak yardage. He's able to catch the ball. I seen one play, I think it was against the Saints, where he caught like a short slant and took it to the house. So when you have a guy that's good as far as getting yak yardage and good at making catches and running after catch, that's huge. And I definitely think in this offense with a guy like Arthur Smith, he's going to get that ball out of Matt Ryan's hand fast. Like, he's going to get the ball in these playmakers' hands. We're not going to see these long 5- and 7-step drops, I don't believe, like we saw with Dirk Cutter. I do think that Arthur Smith is going to get that ball out quick. And Tajae Sharpe is one of those guys, if you hit him in space, he showed just from the tape that I've seen of him from Tennessee, he's a guy, once he catches the ball and he gets the ball in his hands, he's able to do something with it, similar to a Cordero Patterson. He reminds me a lot of Cordero Patterson. I think Cordero Patterson is faster than him, and Cordero Patterson is a little bit more explosive. But I've seen some plays of Tajae Sharpe when he was with Tennessee where he took one that was like 50 yards to the house off of like a quick screen or quick slant. So I definitely think that he's an athlete, a guy that is definitely going to get his opportunities, and he's going to get his chance to prove that he deserves to be on this Falcons roster or deserves playing time. But he's going to have a ton of competition. I mean, Olamide Zaccheaus is not going to lay down for him. Frank Darby is not going to lay down for him. We have a lot of young studs on this team that's going to be vouching for playing time. So as much as we like, I like Tajae Sharp, Olamide Zaccheaus is no joke. And he showed us last year before he got injured that he's a guy that's very explosive as well. So it's going to be tough for these young guys. They're definitely going to have to prove in camp that they deserve playing time, because it's not going to be a whole lot of footballs to go around due to how many, great offensive weapons we have at our disposal. And Arthur Smith is going to have his hands full when calling plays as far as getting the ball, spreading this ball out, because we have so many guys that are dangerous. The good news with that is, I keep saying it, the Falcons won't be predictable this year. Good luck with trying to slow our defense, slow our offense and slow our defense down, because we're, the predictability, the unpredictability of not knowing what we're going to do from game to game, and us making adjustments and things of that nature, and us having so many playmakers and the offense not solely focused around Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley only. I mean, it's gonna be nice to watch this offense and see what Arthur Smith can scheme up this year. But let's see here. And he said that's Brian People says they're sleeping on Blake too. Yeah, Christian Blake's another guy that's why I said, I mean, this Falcons team is loaded with offensive talent and defensive talent. We're littered with young talent. So he's another guy. Christian Blake last year showed when he got opportunities, he did his thing. I mean, he made a lot of big catches to extend drives last year when he got in the games. The bad thing about our last regime is that they really didn't give these young players a chance to succeed. I mean, we didn't see a player. I'm trying to think of his name. He was the wide receiver that we brought in from Minnesota last year, big body wide receiver, Laquan Treadwell. He was another guy that I liked last year. We brought in on a 1-year deal. I believe he played his college ball at Ole Miss, and a lot of people thought that he was a bust when he went to Minnesota, but he came over to Atlanta, and when he got his opportunities, he really did his thing. I mean, he was a guy that was willing to block. He put me in the mind of Mohamed Sanu because of his size and physicality. And I really wanted the Falcons to actually bring him back, maybe on a 1-year deal because of his size. And I feel like the Falcons have a lot of shifty, smaller wide receivers, but we're kind of missing that physicality, that big physical wide receiver since we lost Mohamed Sanu. Mohamed Sanu is like 6'2", 6'3", and he was one of the big guys that we used in the slot and kind of used him like a tight end at times. So I definitely think that Christian Blake is another guy that has immense talent, and he could be one of the guys that could be on this Falcons roster as well. But I really think that they're going to have a hard time cutting down the wide receiver position because we have so much talent. Somebody's not going to make this roster. As much as I talk about how much talent we have, somebody's going to either go to the practice squad or somebody's going to get cut because we have maybe probably about 7 or 8 quality wide receivers on this team. So somebody's not making the roster. Somebody's going to end up being on the practice squad or is going to end up on somebody else's team after this training camp is over, because you only can keep so many wide receivers and tight ends. And we brought in a bunch of tight ends and we got a bunch of young wide receivers as well. Let's see here. So Juan Carter says, Jew, are you going to be live at the meet and greet? I'm definitely looking forward to coming to the meet and greet. That's a great question. I actually live in Orlando, Florida, but I am trying to make my way up there to Atlanta and come up north that way for that meet and greet to meet you guys. I would love to meet you guys and talk and chat some Falcons football with you, and also watch our Falcons beat up on the Saints. I do expect us to beat up on the Saints that day. So hopefully we can go out there and get a win on that Sunday. But I'm definitely looking forward to meeting you guys on November 7th. You guys definitely come out. It's going to be a huge event. And like I said, I would love to meet you guys in person and chat some Falcons football with you. And also watch the game with you guys, because it's gonna be live. It's gonna be a movie, as Twisted always says. It's definitely gonna be a movie. You definitely are not gonna want to miss the meet and greet. In November, Miss Maggie's been doing her thing. You guys go check her out at I believe it's the Fire Bar is what they call it. So go check her out at the Fire Bar, the lounge that is now the new official Atlanta Falcons spot for all the kickbacks and things of that nature this season. And the season is fastly approaching, like it's right around the corner. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing you guys at the meet and greet. And I hope to, see you guys there, take some pictures with you guys, and chat some Falcons football. Let's see here. And Isaac just hit the nail on the head with that comment about Laquan Treadwell. Yeah, Laquan Treadwell was definitely a guy that was great in the red zone. And that's something that I think the Falcons, well, we really won't miss it. I won't say we'll miss it because of Kyle Pitts being here and Hayden Hurst being here, but you never can have enough weapons, on the offensive side of the ball. But I think at this point, the Falcons just looked at it as we have enough weapons on the offense, and that was the reason they let Laquan Treadwell walk in free agency. But I definitely think that those big body guys are great to have at wide receiver, not only because they're good targets or big targets in the red zone, but they're great in the running game at blocking. Like, one thing that I think with Mohamed Sanu that went overlooked was his physicality in the run game, his ability to be willing to go down the field and block for running backs, spring running backs for big plays. He sprang Julio Jones for big plays in the NFC Championship game where he was running down the field and blocked 2 defenders. So that's something that, as a wide receiver, you have to have a mentality, that physicality and a mentality to go out there and block. And I think having bigger guys like Kyle Pitts, when we flex him out wide, it's not just to get him the ball, but you may flex a guy like Kyle Pitts or Hayden Hurst out wide to block on a bubble screen. Put those big bodies out in front of a Zacchaeus, or put them out in front of a Javian Hawkins, and allow those guys to go up the field and push those little cornerbacks around and use their size on the outside. So I definitely think Laquan Treadwell is one of those guys that we're going to miss as far as his physicality wise, because Zacchaeus, Calvin Ridley, and the guys that we have are not the biggest and not the most physical wide receivers. But with Arthur Smith being here, trust me, these guys are going to be willing to block. If not, they're going to be on the bench. So I definitely think that these guys are going to adopt that mentality of their head coaches, as they always say. If you heard Terrence Mathis, who he's brought on, the Atlanta Falcons legend, Terrence Mathis, he talked about the team taking on the mentality of the head coach. And if you've seen Arthur Smith, he's a no-nonsense type of guy. If you see him in these press conferences and these interviews, he doesn't look like a guy that you want to get on his bad side. So I expect these wide receivers definitely to be sticking their nose in there in the run game. And if they don't, they're going to be on the bench, or they will be cut after training camp. Let's see. I'm going to take a couple more questions, and then we're going to get off of here. Let's see here. Tony Wright says, based on what you just said, Jew, about our receiving core, it's possible that Matt Ryan will come close to his record of throwing touchdown passes to 13 different receivers. Maybe he'll will throw to 11. I think so. I'm not too sure when it comes to him hitting 13 wide receivers. I mean, 2016 was just like one of those magical seasons. Arguably Matt Ryan's best season of his career. Other than 2017, I believe it was, or 2018, I think it was, under Sark. He had a good season as well, where he threw like 35 touchdowns or something like that. We just had a losing record that year, so it kind of went overlooked. But I think that he definitely is going to spread the ball around, no doubt. I just think when we get in the red zone, we're going to ground and pound. Like, when we get in the red zone, I really don't think we're going to see 5 wide receivers and things of that nature like we saw with Dirk Cutter. I think you're going to see a lot of ground and pound, a lot of downhill running, for like a guy like Quadra Olesen and Mike Davis. We brought these big guys in for a reason, and we brought these tight ends in for a reason. So I think we're going to see a lot out of guys like Lee Smith along the goal line. In those plays, we may sneak him out for a couple touchdowns, but we're going to bring in the jumbo package. I believe when we get on the goal line, we're going to see 3 and 4 tight end sets where we're bringing guys in so we can just bludgeon the defensive line. We're just going to go forward and push these guys off the ball. And I expect the Falcons to be a much more improved, not only in the running game, but also in red zone efficiency. That's something that Arthur Smith has been great at as far as his red zone efficiency when he was with the Tennessee Titans and calling plays and getting guys in the end zone. We know that Derrick Henry was the motor to that Tennessee Titans offense, and I expect the same thing here in Atlanta. I really think we're going to see this 4-headed or 3-headed monster in the backfield, where we're going to see Cordell Patterson, we're going to see Mike Davis, we're going to see Quadra Olson. We're going to give those guys the ball when we get in the goal line situations. We may hit you with a play action pass here and there, but I really think that Arthur Smith is going to, bludgeon these guys with that running game. And I also think we're going to see K-Styles' favorite position, the fullback. Don't be surprised to see a guy like Keith Smith in the flats. I mean, that's like a staple of the West Coast offense. When we had Patrick DeMarco, play action pass, hard run fake, get that ball out on the outside to the fullback in the flats. He's usually wide open for a walk-in touchdown. So don't be surprised to see Keith Smith score a couple touchdowns. Don't be surprised to see Hayden Hurst, Kyle Pitts line up in the backfield like the H-back or like a tight end. Or like a fullback, and then play action pass, hard run fake, and swing that ball, throw that ball out there to the tight end, whether it's Lee Smith, whether it's Kyle Pitts in the backfield. Those guys catching the ball in the flats. But I definitely think red zone efficiency is going to be at an all-time high this year for our Atlanta Falcons. And Jamar Williams, he says, Jew, if you could choose, who would you want to start on the offensive line and defensive line? I'm going to start with the defensive line because the defensive line, I think, is the easiest right off the top of my head. You'll have Dante Fowler at the outside linebacker position or / defensive end position. You'll have Grady Jarrett at the nose or at the 3 tech. You'll have Marlon Davidson on the inside as well next to him. You'll have on the other side probably Michael Walker, or at times you'll see Steven Means. So that on that other side, you're going to see it rotate. You're not going to see just one guy opposite Dante Fowler. I think we're going to see multiple guys until we kind of figure out who's the best at playing that position. Jacob Tuioti-Mariner is a guy that I'm big on. I really love his game because he's versatile. Not only is he a guy you can bring in, in blitz and get after the quarterback on the edge, but he's a guy, and Matt Mike did a film breakdown talking about the different type of zone, coverages that Dean Pease likes to run, where he's going to use these linebackers like Michael Walker, where it looks like they're just coming on the blitz or setting the edge. Next thing you know, you have a corner or somebody coming off the edge, and you're dropping that linebacker, that outside linebacker, into those passing lanes. So I definitely think that Jacob Tuioti-Mariner possibly will be another name that can be on that outside. And then John Kaminsky. John Kaminsky is another name that's being kind of overlooked and kind of, being overlooked from this Falcons team. AO is another guy. So I really think it'll be Dante Fowler, Grady Jarrett, Marlon Davidson. And then on that other side where where we have multiple guys that can play that other outside linebacker position opposite Dante Fowler, I think we're going to, sample and do some experimenting during the preseason to see which guy steps up and which guy deserves the starting role. But I think you're going to see a rotational pass rush. So you're not going to get a steady diet of just one or two guys like we got with Tat McKinley and Vic Beasley when they were here. I think you're going to see four to five guys rotating in and out of the game to keep these guys fresh. So I think you're not going to get a steady diet of one thing, which is going to be a great thing. Now on the offensive side of the ball, as far as offensive line, I think at the center position you'll have Matt Hennessy. I think he's going to beat out Drew Dahlman. At the guard position, I think it's going to be Mayfield at that left guard position. At right guard, you're going to have Chris Lindstrom, who's a budding star in this league at that guard position. Then you'll have Caleb McGarry at the right tackle and Jake Matthews at the left tackle position. And that's how I would run with things. Unless, in training camp or in these preseason games, somebody steps up or, steps out, in the spotlight and proves that they deserve that starting role. Personally, I think that Caleb McGarry and Jake Matthews are solid at the tackle position. And I think due to Matt Gono going down with the injury, and he may not be back until later on in the season if he comes back at all, I think at this point, it's pretty much a wrap as far as Jalen Mayfield. I think his physicality, I just think we've been missing that physicality at that guard position. And I really don't see anybody beating him out for the position. Of course, he's going to have to compete for it. And we have other guys that we brought in. I just don't think that they're as talented as Jalen Mayfield coming out of Michigan. I think he has the size and that physicality that not Dean Pease, but Arthur Smith likes up front. And I think he'll be the guy that ends up winning that left guard role. But with that being said, I'm gonna answer a few more questions here, and then we're gonna jump off here. Let's see. So Jarvis Williams says on defense, Marlon Davidson, Grady, Jarrett. I'm assuming that's Tyler Davison. Then he said at the linebacker position, Foye Oluokun, Deion Jones, Dante Fowler, Michael Walker. He says corner is going to be Fabian Monroe and AJ Terrell. Strong safety, Richie Grant, and free safety, Deron Harmon. I like that lineup. I don't know. As far as the safeties go, I think that's going to be interchangeable at the safety role. I mean, you can see Richie Grant back there at times, Eric Harris. You're going to see Isaiah Oliver at times, back there in the safeties, playing with the safeties as well. And we're going to mix and match back there. So I think as far as the corner positions, I do think that that's going to is pretty much solidified that AJ Terrell is the alpha male when it comes to the number one corner. I mean, that's basically, you can stamp him or mark him down as the number one corner. And then I do think that I talked about this a little bit earlier, that Fabian Monroe is a guy that I think they brought in to be the number two corner. And I think he's going to prove his value this season at that second corner position because of his size and his technique. He plays with great technique, and that's what you need when you're playing an outside corner position. I think Fabian Monroe's athleticism and size gives him the advantage over guys like Kendall Sheffield. But a guy that's kind of being overlooked a little bit is Darren Hall. I think Darren Hall is another guy we brought in out of San Diego State, a ball hawk, a guy that can also compete for the outside corner position. I don't think that he'll win the starting or that second corner position on the depth chart right off the bat, but I do think he'll have a chance later on in the season as he continues to develop to be one of those guys that could possibly play outside, because he does have the speed, and to me, he does a great job of being aware of where the football is. That was something I think that a guy like Isaiah Oliver struggled with, was turning around when the football was approaching and, being aware of where the football was and where the man was at all times. I think that's something that Darren Hall does a great job at, and he's a ball hawk. So I definitely think that Darren Hall is a dark horse to possibly be later on in the season one of those guys that can play outside, or if somebody goes down with injury, knock on wood, he could be one of those guys that shocks a lot of people. And I think he has the attributes to be an outside corner. I think Kendall Sheffield and those guys will possibly be the guys competing for like the nickel and dime roles. I don't think that they'll be used as the outside corners unless injuries strike. Let's see here. Devon said, all right, y'all, I'll get with you guys later. Good night to everyone in the chat. Be easy, Jew. Hey, man, I appreciate Devon tuning in. He's one of the regulars, always tuning in on the channel, whether it's here on my What's the Word Dirty Bird or just here on any of our live streams here at Atlanta Falcons Nation. So shout outs to you, Devon. I appreciate you tuning in. And let's see. Tony Wright says Kyle Pitts, Jake Matthews, Jalen Mayfield, Matt Hennessy, Chris Lindstrom, and Caleb McGarry. Yeah, that sounds about right to me. Hayden Hurst, Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, Mike Davis. Yeah, that's how I would have the offense panning out, unless somebody just, shows out in training camp and shows out during the preseason. I think Mike Davis is a guy that you can go ahead and pencil in as a starting running back. He was a guy that they kind of sought out in free agency and I think he's a guy that definitely is going to be the number one running back. You guys definitely go check out my boy K Styles channel, just K Styles. Definitely go and check out his channel. Today he dropped a video where he talked about 3 reasons why Mike Davis will be the starting running back for Atlanta Falcons. And I think it was a great video. He puts out great content over there on his channel. So you guys definitely go hit that like and subscribe button for my boy K Styles. I definitely think Tony Wright is completely right. He probably hit the nail on the head with this as far as all of the starters that he has. Unless somebody gets outplayed. Like I said, it's nobody set in stone as far as Matt Hennessy. He's a guy that's basically going to have to battle it out with Drew Dalman because they seen something in Drew Dalman. That's the reason they drafted him. So I think that that's going to be a pretty good matchup in camp. And Jalen Mayfield, those are the positions I think that are really going to be up. And it's going to be a battle. As far as Kyle Pitts, I think he's going to be the starter, but Hayden Hurst could put up a fight as well. So Hayden Hurst is not going to just lay down because we drafted Kyle Pitts as the number 4 draft pick. Hayden Hurst is going to have something to say about that as well in camp. So we're going to see if Kyle Pitts rises to the occasion. I definitely think he will, but it wouldn't surprise me if Hayden Hurst, is right there on his heels. Brian People says Avery Williams and Tyquan Graham. Yeah, Tyquan Graham is a guy, like I said, I think he'll compete. He'll be a rotational guy at the defensive tackle. And he's a guy you can move up and down the defensive line because he's also can play outside at the defensive end position. And then Avery Williams is out of Boise State, the cornerback that we brought in. I'm not too sure about how much he can offer us as a corner, but I know he's an excellent special teams player. Like he was one of those guys that was taking kicks back to the house there at Boise State. So he's going to be one of those guys that's going to compete with Cordell Patterson. Personally, I think Cordell Patterson is probably the best return man in the league. So I wish Avery Williams nothing but the best as far as competing with a guy like Cordell Patterson. But I think Cordell Patterson is probably going to win that starting role when it comes to the special teams return as far as punt returns and kickoff returns. But Avery Williams could be slotted at number 2, maybe in kickoff returns on the depth chart. Let's see here. And I think that's pretty much it, you guys. I'm going to get ready to get off here. We're almost at about an hour and 30 minutes. But with that being said, I do appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning in tonight. I do apologize that my special guest didn't get to join us tonight. We are going to get up again another time. But next week at 7 p.m., I will be doing my live show again. What's the word? Dirty Bird. And we will have on a special guest, which will be one of the Saints YouTubers. And he's definitely going to be telling us his expectations for the New Orleans Saints and Atlanta Falcons matchup this season and what he expects from his New Orleans Saints. So we will have some of the enemies. They will be coming over into our territory next week to debate Falcons and Saints. So you guys definitely come, definitely tell a friend, definitely continue to share out this content and join me next week so we can battle the opponent. We definitely going to talk a little bit about this upcoming season and what we expect from our rivals. The Saints have won the division, I think, the last 3 years in the NFC South the last 3 years. So it's time for the Falcons to rise up. As I always say, it's time for us to take our rightful place. And I know he's going to be in here talking, the fans are going to be in here talking trash next week. And he's definitely going to have something to say about his New Orleans Saints and them winning the division the last 3 years. But with that being said, this been your boy Jew. I really appreciate each and every one of you guys for continuing to tune into the channel. Like I said, definitely continue to tune in on Monday nights, kicking it with K Styles on Atlanta Falcons Nation and on his channel on Wednesday nights. What's the word? Dirty Bird here with your boy Jew. Thursday nights, K Styles does his show as well, which is a 6-man convo. So you guys join him tomorrow night. And then Friday nights, we do the Atlanta Falcons. Basically, it's Friday Night Madness for the fans, where you guys get to come on and chat with us and give us your perspective on our Atlanta Falcons and all things NFL. But with that being said, this been your boy Jew. I'll holler at you guys in the next video. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up. Peace.